Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, we tie up our last few loose ends on Footfall. We've got a bunch of smaller things to tackle today, and then one big thing next time. Aw, look at that little guy. What a cutie. Alright, let's get this done.
Is there money to be made?
The man stops and salutes you with his flamer. Your lordship, what an honor. The whole of Footfall is talking about the new head of House von Valancius. Foreman of Footfall Utility Crew 3, at your service. A pleasure. What's going on here? Just burning rats and some trash and some parasites of other sorts. The district's under quarantine, you see. They got hit by something nasty. A disease, or, maybe it ain't a disease, just some bugs and worms what crawled out of some ship or other. It is a bit odd that it happened here and not at the docks, I'll grant you. Things like that usually start there. They even spray the place with some gunk to kill all the bugs and worms. But I guess something slipped through. 2 families in that block way over there snuffed it, and the Liege wasted no time getting the district surrounded so that nobody could leave. So you don't know exactly what's going on in there? Just that people started dying? 1,000 apologies, your lordship. But no, we don't. And we'd rather not find out. Who in their right mind would want to get closer to whatever it is? We've contained the foulness, and that's good enough if you ask me. I don't suppose you know exactly how those people died, like symptoms? Who knows? They found them in their hovels already dead, blue sores on their bodies, and they stank something awful, which is why the lot that found them didn't even risk looting the corpses. Good on them, I guess. Doesn't mean we let them out, of course. Of course. So how exactly are you treating this outbreak? You're looking at it. We stand here, burn the foulness, and we've got people standing guard so that no one escapes. Put some mines down, a whole load of them, for the same reasons. The water, the sewers, all blocked off to stop any communications getting out. The air's open, I suppose, but the foulness don't seem to be airborne. There haven't been any strange deaths outside the district. Uh-huh. And you mentioned there's still people trapped in there. I don't suppose anyone's doing something to assist them, or... What's the deal there? Of course not. I heard Reverend Hieronymus has been praying for their souls, which sounded more like retribution fell upon them, and rightly so. That's the most they can hope for. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to open this up for me. Take a first-hand look at what's really going on. Your lordship, have mercy. I can't say no to you, but the danger is just as real to you as it is to the whole station. We'll clear a way for you. But it'll take time, a lot of time. It won't be easy to break down the barricades and disarm the mines. He gives you a long look, likely hoping that you will reconsider. But after receiving no reaction, he gives the order to his assistants. Wow, that was a whole lot easier than it was back in Alpha. We came in incognito, so we had to order Vladame to lift the quarantine instead. And he was not happy about it. Ah, your lordship. Please don't be angry, but we haven't cleared a passage for you yet. Soon, though. Not that many mines left. I mean, it's been like 5 seconds, so I'm not going to bust your chops over it, but yeah, it is kind of a bummer you have to wait either way.
I always have a
But the important thing is we put it in motion, so we'll have something to come back for later down the line. Bet I could hit that jar over there. Shut your gob. Don't you see? The new rogue trader is walking here. And? You think the rogue trader is gonna run to the Liege to report that we're wasting his bullets on target practice? I mean, I wasn't, but if you're gonna be all weird about it, maybe I will.
Always keep your eye on the prize.
Honestly, I don't really care. Though I suppose if they were shooting people for target practice, then I would get involved. Honestly, kind of pleasantly surprised they're not. That would be very in keeping with 40k's grimdark aesthetic. Anyway, let's hit the atrium. Put in some good faith effort. First things first, we've got a cache to collect. Concealed in the lamp,
my options open.
The Shrine of St. Drusus near the Liege's Palace. Gunsmith's Guild.
Rise to the top, or get left in the dust.
And there it is. One of the many altars. It looks better tended than most places on Footfall. The heart of Footfall is a colossal statue of the Emperor, carved from a single asteroid. Psh, you call that a tribute to the Emperor? I would have expected something a little meatier. Note from the Lantern Cache. You're on the right path, Seeker. Remember the place. Small quay. Large windows. Oh, which they just now straight up tell you is the docks. Fair enough. Yeah, I remember being stumped by that back in Alpha. Quay was just not a term I had ever heard from my peers. Ended up having to look it up. Hey guys. Enjoying the new accommodations, I see? Try the wet bar. I think it's the third one on the left. And now we have to wrap things up with Hieronymus. Then we'll head for the docks. The Emperor protects. That he does. Oh, and you were right about there being cultists in the Shadow Quarter. Slightly less now. A grim smile brightens his features, and he makes the sign of the Aquila. I hope that their suffering was commensurate with their deeds. I mean, I don't know about that. It was over pretty quick, but hey, you mind if I ask you some questions? My sermon planted the seed of faith in the heart of another rogue trader once. Incendia Corda. Perhaps you are destined to become my second fledgling. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, but, sure. What do you think of the Emperor? You think it is so easy to put into words his essence and splendor? The Emperor is the perfect deity that reads our hearts and grants us his light. He led humanity out of darkness and horror. He created our great home. He experienced torment and pain which only made him stronger. That is a lesson to us all. Purity is not to be found at the bottom of the dirtiest hive or in golden palaces, but only among the ranks of those who suffer. Argenta silently makes the sign of the Aquila, her bright eyes burning with unyielding flame. Well, gosh, that makes me feel better about being tortured. So how does one go about worshipping the Emperor? Pray to him, destroy his enemies, and touch not their poisoned gifts. Cast aside all doubt and be vigilant against the weak souls beside you. When you see a sign of taint, burn it away without pity. Pain is good. It tears the crust of vileness from one's soul. And remember that if you see no fault in you or around you, then you are not being diligent enough in your search. Or you are being too lenient on yourself, averting your eyes from the truth. Right. And does this level of scrutiny just apply to common folk, or to the Emperor's servants as well? You speak of the Adeptus Ministorum? Well, these heralds of his word hold great power. Every priest, myself included, is part of its hierarchy, and the Ecclesiarchy possesses the unique right to judge what is virtuous and what is malign. The Adeptus Ministorum prays and cares for the temples. It sends missions such as my own to every corner of the dominion of humanity. It fights against heresies. Yeah, that's what I thought. Somehow the people doing all the judging and collecting all the tithes are beyond reproach. Sorry, Father, I've got absolute faith in the Emperor himself, but less so for the people who claim to speak for him. And rightly so. The Ecclesiarchy harbors plenty of covetous and power-hungry recidivists. They've forgotten what it means to be a shepherd. They've grown soft and sluggish. For too long have their souls and bodies gone without suffering. Really? I don't disagree, but, some folks might see that as heretical. And many others would find them truthful. I am a preacher of a radical teaching that renounces fear. I've left the bounds of the blessed Imperium to carry his light into the darkness of the frontier. I've come to know depravity firsthand, and am now able to perceive it under any guise. I think I can afford myself a modicum of truth. Sure, yeah, I can actually respect that. Tell me, Father, out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on the enemies of mankind? It has 3 faces. The inhuman Xenos who wish death upon us simply because they are unlike us. The pitiful subhuman mutants, abominations that wish death upon us because they envy us and are ashamed of themselves. And the arch-enemy that reigns in the Immaterium, which wishes death upon us by its very nature. Adira starts giggling at Hieronymus's words. He forgot to mention people like me. My whole life people have told me I'm filth on the face of humanity. It's poison. It's bane. She stops abruptly with a sob. Okay, I'm gonna need you to keep it together, Adira. You're embarrassing me in front of the insane priest. So, Father, you mentioned you had ties to another rogue trader? Have you heard of Aspis Corda? Pirate, blasphemer, xenophile, and egregious apostate? Incendia is her heir, and a rarity among rogue traders. The protection of the Holy Warrant typically leads to the swift atrophy of conscience and pious dread, but not in Incendia's case. She relentlessly hunts down pirates and firebrands, and brings rebelling colonies to repentance, establishing strict discipline. The weight of her wrath is great indeed. The colonies she punishes are girded with orbital rings of heretic corpses as a warning to the survivors. As her personal confessor and guide, I find no end to the joy her triumphs in faith bring me. Yeah, Father, I'm not sure most people would consider massacres an accurate measurement of virtue. They aren't massacres. This is a war on apostasy and treason. And in this war, Incendia Corda is inflicting grievous wounds upon the wicked. Right, yeah, sure, that does sound like a sane response, thank you. Think nothing of it, young Von Valancius. So, hey, I do have more questions, but, you think we could maybe move somewhere a bit more private first? Might get a little awkward. Why? For a missionary, his temple is the patch of deck beneath his feet. From where I stand, I can clearly see the life of my flock, all its bustling, blooming, and wilting. Here I can see their vile urges, futile hopes, and flashes of sincerity. If I were in the habit of locking myself in a temple, would I have made it in time to intervene in the massacre of your subjects from Kiava Gamma? No, truth resides not in golden halls, but here, in the square, among the people. Golden halls are home to other, far filthier things. Fine, yeah, okay. Well then, let's talk about you, Father, if you don't mind. Neither my past nor my present hold any secrets, but take heed when gazing into my heart, for many dark thoughts lurk within. Oh, is that so? Well, I mean, now you know I've got to ask, right? What's going on with your heart? Bad omens. Dark times have come. Ships from the Imperium barely appear in the Coronis Expanse anymore. In Footfall's shadow quarters, taint thrives, and the people here are corrupt enough to succumb to it gladly. Okay, but that's not really much of a secret. Rumors around the Expanse say that the accursed Xenos have grown bold and are rearing their heads. They attack ships and settlements, walk under the suns of Imperium worlds like kings, instead of cowering in the shadows. What next? What adversities await us if such disgrace is happening already? He shakes his head sternly. There's more and more talk of how poorly things are going in the Expanse. Some days it seems I can't take 2 steps without hearing some peasant pontificating on the matter. Even if it is as dire as they say, the Von Valancius realm will not crumble under the blows of fate, no matter how devastating. Chin up, Lord Captain. This is no time to lose heart and lament your lot. Not only is your hope false, it is also dangerous. Among his servants there have been people of greater integrity who sullied themselves in their attempts to rise above the rest. Yeah? So what, you're suggesting the Drusians are somehow better? We are a sanctioned imperial cult which honors St. Drusus, scourge of the Bale Childer, bane of Xenos. Just as he once fearlessly ventured into the Calixis sector and spearheaded its conquest, so do we travel to untamed reaches and expand the Imperium's borders. We are pilgrims and scouts who descend into the darkness of lawless sectors, and our eyes are inured to vice and filth. Just as St. Drusus found his martyr's death and was reborn in faith, so do we search for the purifying power of trials and suffering. From the folds of his black robes he produces a thin pamphlet. Read this. It contains the basics of our dogma. Perhaps you, too, will sense the truth in St. Drusus's words. Gosh, thanks, but you know, I'd really rather hear it in your words, Father. What drew you to this particular saint? He was a great saint, irrepressible and decisive. Drusus served the Emperor as a simple member of the Guard who fought in the glorious Angevin Crusade and rose to the rank of general. It was a grueling conquest. The Imperium invaded the Calixis sector, back then a savage expanse, populated by Xenos and heretics. Drusus delivered many defeats unto the enemies of humanity. He brought down the Twisted Kings on Acreage, liberated the planet Drea from the unholy dark daemons, and had many triumphs. But then they encountered a race of unholy Xenos. Rivers of blood flowed. Golgana Angevin died in his headquarters. The crusade was about to crumble, but then we received unexpected help from a foe. The Xenos sent their assassins to the great Drusus, but the Emperor's will shielded his servant from the attack. Slain, but resurrected through a miracle, Drusus asserted himself at the head of the Angevin Crusade as its Lord Militant, and saw the Xenos' extermination through to the end. He brought the Calixis sector to accord, and was proclaimed a living saint. Funny, the story of St. Drusus that you know is completely different. Huh. You know, Father, I consider myself a pretty learned man, but I've got to say, in my studies, St. Drusus was just another petty noble jockeying for position. And when the assassins came for him, he just paid them off. Hieronymus looks at you with a smirk. Well, of course you've heard that. But just consider for a moment whose words you are repeating right now. The one who put them into your head. Do they mean the Imperium well? Think on it. Look, all I'm saying, Father, is that, Emperor aside, no one is above reproach. Not me, and I'm guessing not you either. Who were you before you came to Footfall? A wretched fiend, blinded by my ambitions. I served in my home planet's Adeptus Administratum division. I was a shrewd and sly bureaucrat, and I soared to great heights, to the very chair of prefect. In 30 years, I turned my home from a withered fringe colony into a prosperous world. Our wealth grew as we bloomed. But the bloom was a veneer for rot. Opulence had depraved us, and luxury had seduced us with its sordid promises. The planet's denizens no longer wished to pray or work. They only sought entertainment and dangerous philosophies. 1,000 vile heresies and 1,000,000 appalling vices bred on my world like mold on a Nutribar. In those days, I saw with my own eyes the shameless ugliness of the soul. I repented of my hubris, left the position of prefect, and became a traveling missionary. I have been one ever since. As for my world, 20 years later, the Holy Inquisition consigned it to purifying flames. So what I'm hearing here is that you were so corrupt you got an entire planet killed. But that somehow qualifies you to go around and tell other people how to live their lives? He nods calmly. You are quite right. I am a wicked, irredeemable scoundrel. Shall we embrace, brother? Yeah, I think I'll take a rain check on that, but thanks, Father. I appreciate you answering my questions. I am surprised that you had any to begin with. Yeah. See you around, Padre. The Emperor protects. Uh-huh. He sure does. I've got to say, Doloroso is an interesting character. It's funny, you know, back in Alpha, a lot of people were predicting he was going to end up being a bad guy. Which, honestly, I think is kind of a given. You know, the simple fact that they actually gave him a portrait implies he will be important later down the line. Much in the same way that, you know, of course, Vladame will be important, and the bartender will be important, and so on. As will the various other faction heads, Rizza, Opticon, etc. I do have a hard time gauging, though, whether Doloroso will end up turning into a bad guy or just an overly zealous, quote-unquote, good guy, since, you know, there's such a blurred line in the Warhammer 40k setting. So while I am fairly certain that at some point we will end up coming into open conflict with Hieronymus, it's hard for me to really guess whether it's because A, he'll actually be a secret heretic, or B, because we're simply not dogmatic enough, since we are, of course, leaning into the whole iconoclast thing, which does make us, you know, in many ways, a kind of wishy-washy borderline heretic ourselves. At least in the eyes of the Imperium's most faithful. Note from the cache by the dock windows. The answer is close, Seeker. Remember the word realizing. Remember the place, a tunnel in the shadow of a bridge. A bridge in the shadow of the great statue. Right, so another clue. And sadly, I'll go ahead and say it now. I know from Alpha that this one takes us into the quarantine zone, which unfortunately we simply do not have access to right now. So we're pretty much done with that for now until we clear the next major story event. Heinrichs, I see you've come to darken my dock step once more. Be with you in a moment. The refugees from Kiava Gamma are looking at you, some with apprehensive frowns, some with unconcealed gratitude. Your lordship, comes the discordant chorus of voices. Listen up, people. I know you've been through a lot already, but I need intel. I need to know what's happening on Kiava Gamma. We told you everything back in the square. Things are rough on Kiava Gamma. Maybe there isn't even a Kiava Gamma anymore. The planet was attacked by a horde of heretics. They shouted unholy prayers and cut down people left and right. We heard everything from orbit, listening to one voxcast after another. We realized there wasn't anyone left to save, so we thought we'd run. But then it was like our crew went mad somehow. The captain smashed his own head against a cogitator, and so did half the officers. Everyone who survived did their best to steer the ship into the warp, and here we are. Only 3 ships made it out alive, ours being one of them. I don't know what happened to the other 2. They never made it to Footfall. Maybe they disappeared into the warp, or maybe something else happened to them. Adira freezes, listening to something. Then she blurts out in a changed voice. The first beast, its body wounded, crawled into a hole under the palace of an eminent lord. The second beast, its skin and ulcers, perished in an asteroid grave. The third beast, its essence cursed, is curled up in the glow of a yellow sun. Oh, well, thank you, Adira. Yes, okay, so the first one, obviously, that's the one that arrived here. Crawled into a hole under the palace of an eminent lord. The second, it sounds like, broke up in an asteroid field somewhere. While the third is no doubt chaos-tainted and still cruising about somewhere in a sector with a yellow sun. We'll keep that in mind in our future travels. Hey, what happened to the ship that brought you here? If it got this far, it might still be salvageable. Apologies, we couldn't save it. The ship was damaged during the escape. We're lucky it got us all the way to Footfall. It's at the far docks, but there isn't much use for it anymore. It doesn't look like it's going to fly anywhere. And the local recollegers have already removed some of the valuable parts. You can send your people to take apart whatever's left, scavenge some components. The map of the Expanse was revealed to me before the Sea of Souls roiled and tangled the paths. How did you, desperate ones, reach Footfall all the way from the Crannock system without a navigator? Frightened by Cassia's appearance, the refugee covers his face with his hands, trembling violently. Please, forgive my worthless words. We were feeling our way in the dark, you could say. All we had is some old maps. We prayed to the God Emperor day and night while our helmsman plotted the course. A miracle, it must have been, your lordship. That does seem a mite bit convenient. Alright, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I appreciate the intel, and I'm glad you're alive, but you do realize the things you were saying. If I were Theodora, you'd already be dead. One by one, the refugees fall to their knees. Please, have mercy. A few idiots shouted some things, that's all. We shut them up ourselves already. It was their grief and fear talking. Please don't punish the rest of us for it. Pascal's voice sounds impassive and cold.
Vituperation directed at the Adeptus Mechanicus was likewise registered. Denial is meaningless.
I mean, obviously we're not going to execute them, but I think it is important to at least... Oh, well, both dogmatic options involve executing them. Never mind. If there was one that let us punish them without actually killing them, I'd go with that, but I guess we'll just go Iconoclast. In light of your service to the Von Valancius dynasty, delivering this intel and one of my missing void ships, I'll look the other way, this once. Their eyes beam. Praise be to the Emperor! We're saved and pardoned! We'll do as we're told. We won't say another word. Bowing hastily, the refugees back away from you. Wow, 5 points. That was definitely worth it. Well, I say that now, but we'll see how things turn out. A familiar figure turns to you. Heinrich Van Kalox, interrogator of the Ordo Xenos, bows his head respectfully. Lord Captain? Honored interrogator, what a surprise! Did you, perchance, leave something in your cabin? Not at all, First Officer Wersurian. I am not in the habit of leaving a trail. But I thank you for your concern. So what do you need? Heinrich sighs. Your directness of expression does you credit. Alas, your ship will have to accommodate me once more. I was able to contact my mentor and report the tragic events that transpired on Rykad Minoris. I also received some information from my agents regarding the movements and actions of the enemies of humanity, including the Xenos that we're assuming were involved in the theft of the star. According to their findings, the threat now hangs over other worlds. This time yours, Lord Captain. Heinrich clears his throat and begins in a pointedly official tone. By the order of the Lord Inquisitor Xavier Calcazar, whose duty is to stand sentinel over the Coronis Expanse, the rogue trader of House Von Valancius is to take on board the agent of the Most Holy Inquisition and provide escort and support in deeds great and small that serve to safeguard the territories of the Imperium against its enemies. This decree is effective immediately upon announcement, and remains in effect until decided otherwise by His Excellency Calcazar. Adira's whisper is barely audible. All I got from it is that ridding ourselves of this snitch won't be easy. You mind putting that plainly, Van Kalox? I think it's important there's no misunderstandings between us, right? His mouth twists slightly. The Lord Inquisitor has deemed that my presence aboard your ship and in your retinue would be significantly more beneficial to the fight against heresy and evil than my return to my mentor's side. Our parting before our arrival on Footfall was premature. And what exactly brought about this change of heart? I held up my side of the deal, Van Kalox. The cause is the activity of humanity's enemies, including the cult of the Final Dawn. In my absence, the situation in the Coronis Expanse has changed. I have received an exhaustive report from my agents. This heresy has taken root in the regions where the Von Valancius worlds lie. You probably already know about the fate of the industrial world of Kiava Gamma. If not, then I will share what details I know. But not here. Better to talk on board, where we will not be overheard. I really have no choice here, do I? Heinrich studies you for a moment, then, ever so slightly, as if not wanting anyone else to see, shakes his head. I appreciate your honesty. Allow me to return the favor. I don't approve of you or your methods, but I respect the Emperor too much to outright refuse. You have my cooperation. For now. Just don't push your luck. I understand, Valen, but duty to the Golden Throne is seldom a pleasant burden to bear, especially for those in positions of great power. I must also deliver this to you. Heinrichs pulls out a sealed letter. The Lord Inquisitor specified that the contents of this envelope are for your eyes only. I would ask you to read it as soon as you have the time. That is everything for the time being. Are you headed to the ship, or do you still have business on footfall? Whatever the case, I can either wait for you on board, or accompany you as part of your retinue. Well gosh, Heinrichs, what do you think? And let's get a gander at that letter. See what old Calcazar has for us. Letter from Lord Inquisitor Xavier Calcazar. May the Emperor's faithful forever remain in the light of his favor. Let me first express my condolences on the tragic death of the most honorable Theodora von Valancius. Nevertheless, I was elated to learn that the warrant of the rogue traitor has been passed to a worthy and promising heir. These words are not hollow compliments, but rather the Inquisition's official opinion of your person. As fate would have it, you have taken the reins of the von Valancius dynasty in an hour most dire, when grim portents of dark events to come are surfacing throughout the Coronis expanse. I have been duty-bound to become the first sentinel who sees the approaching threat, and I hereby alert you that it is indeed coming. Our loyalty and resolve will be tested. People such as you and I will become the pillars that will unite the Emperor's frightened children and inspire them to fight back. And so I greet you as my dependable ally and assure you of my favor. From now on, you have a trusted friend within the holy orders of the Emperor's Inquisition, and a receptive confidant on whom you can rely. Should the dark times ahead require you to make questionable choices, have no doubt that such an incident will be examined in an exceedingly temperate fashion that rules out the most radical forms of judgment. I have faith in the success of our partnership, and thank you for your contribution, both past and future. Lord Inquisitor Xavier Calcazar. Oh, and unless we are misreading this, that is very much the carrot, as opposed to Heinrichs' stick. Probably safe to assume he had a similar deal with Theodora, essentially agreeing to look the other way when she bent or broke the tenets of the Imperium, as long as she proved herself a useful ally. Hence, I suppose, why she was so begrudgingly carrying out his orders right before she died. Might as well read this one too while we're at it. No sense in backlogging if we can avoid it. Reverend Hieronymus's teaching on the path of St. Drusus. This thin pamphlet exudes a faint, caustic smell, likely that of fresh inscriber ink. Our being is steeped in degradation, and no longer can we imagine existing outside it. Are you capable of perceiving the depths to which this heinous miasma has rooted itself in our lives? Pompous aristocrats indulge in despicable revelries behind their tall palace walls, and planetary masters vie to possess the greatest luxuries, while you and your family choke on your corpse-starch slop after a grueling work shift. Millions of soldiers die in the dirt to combat xenoprofanity, while their commanders, their duties forgotten, squabble among themselves, seeing every death as nothing more than a stone in the monument of their own glory. Scholars pursue forbidden and mind-twisting knowledge. The righteous break their oaths and spread lies. Arbites thieve worse than any criminal would, and you are sullied by vicious degeneracy, of which you are not even aware. This pernicious rot is all-pervading, for there is none who has not succumbed to it. Does it frighten you to be in their midst, in our midst? Will you carry on calmly living in this impious loathsomeness, hiding your gaze from the world and hiding the world from your gaze? Will you become like a mindless servitor? Or will you honestly realize the sheer baseness and repulsiveness of creation? And then you will renounce your former life, and you will accept your new self, and relinquish your worldly affairs, and follow the road that was paved for us by Saint Drusus, warrior and conqueror of sectors uncharted, and leave behind the sacrilege-ridden world, and as is our immortal Emperor's will, join our sacred crusade to walk the path that leads out of the murk of apostasy and irreverence, and into the darkness of the unknown and unfathomed. It is in this darkness that we will light the candles of true faith, for only in their fires can we still find motes of light. Whew, boy, that is a whole bag of crazy. But again, it is an interesting insight into his character. Honestly, reading that really does kind of make me wonder if he's the one behind the Anvers. Their whole rise up against the ancient masters spiel does carry some echoes of his extremist ideology. Though it is interesting to contrast Hieronymus's extremist fanatical beliefs to those of like Heinrich's or other imperial citizens, or Kalkazar for that matter. Though there is every chance in the world that Kalkazar's promise of laxness is just so he can gather additional leverage and ammunition to use against us later down the line, essentially inviting us or even permitting us to sin, just so he can eventually throw it back in our face. That's it. That was it for our loose threads on Footfall, except for one big thing, which yeah, I knew we weren't going to have time for today, so that's next time. We'll hit the pause button for now. I'll rest my throat a bit, take care of the usual off-screen bookkeeping, and we will pick up here next time, as hopefully we finally finish our business on Footfall. It's been fun, but I do feel like it's past time for us to step off. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Revenant, Alois, CrowkingLoR, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, V23, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
I always keep my options open.